Well, the nation stood still on Saturday as the royal family laid Prince Phillip, the Duke of Edinburgh, to rest.
Yes, our royal editor Camilla Tominey joins us now to discuss the day's events. Good morning, Camilla. I mean, the day that was really hard for everybody to watch, I think, and I think if to be invited into something that was so personal, but also reflected what a lot of us have gone through, having to handle a funeral in that way.
I thought the external scenes were what we're used to in the pomp and pageantry, this astonishing military display, which was so colourful and vibrant, but also so dignified and meticulously planned down to the final second. And then inside St George's Chapel, we had this extraordinary scene, didn't we, of the Queen completely isolated, cutting such a lonely figure, I thought, in the pews, or the choir, as it is known in the chapel, wearing black when we are so used to her looking so colourful. There was at one point where she bowed her head down, and I don't know if a photograph captured it, but you just saw her hat and her handbag, not even her face. Her face was covered, obviously, in a mask, which we know she doesn't like. You know, her mantra's always been, I need to be seen to be believed.
Yeah.
So the idea that she then had to go through this ceremony with her face covered, 2 metres away from her nearest and dearest. Having said that, I think the overwhelming theme was obviously one of sadness, but also that it was a completely fitting send-off for this giant of a man who'd given a century of his life, really, to service, both in the Second World War and then to Queen and country. And I just thought the manner in which it was executed made me feel proud to be British.
And it was such a stunning day. Windsor Castle looked incredible, glittering in the sunshine, with, as you say, that military precision, but also a very personal service, a lot of him in it, because he'd planned so much of it.
Very much so. There were nautical themes throughout, so that piping party giving the different naval calls that you would see when you come on a vessel, and then action stations being played by the buglers, but also that soprano and that 4-strong choir from St George's Chapel, I thought, added to the poignancy. Obviously, the congregation couldn't sing hymns because they're having to adhere by the coronavirus rules like anybody else who is handling a funeral right now. The idea that there wasn't a hymn, although there was the William Whiting hymn, Those in Peril on the Sea, which is obviously absolutely synonymous with people who have been in the Royal Navy. But I thought there was so much poignancy. And in a way, I suppose, stylistically, the distance apart of all of the royals in that chapel only added to the gravitas of the moment. It was interesting as well that although it was a very public day, because the world was watching, millions tuning in from around the world, that moment where the coffin goes down into the royal vault, now, that actually takes 4.5 minutes to happen. It's a really slow mechanism. It's not been used since the funeral of the Queen's father, George VI. The cameras panned away at that point, and that was the point, I think, where the royal family were able to very privately grieve and remember. And I think it's completely appropriate. The cameras actually then panned in on the guy on the bagpiper. And that was
as he walked away.
As he walked away. And that was just to give them their private time. Which
but there was a lot of surprise there, because I think that because it was, what, 1952 the last time thankfully, that was used, not used often. I think it took me by surprise. I didn't know that was going to happen. I had no clue that was now it was done in that way. It's very dramatic.
It's extremely dramatic. And, I mean, I've been in that chapel. I was down in Windsor on the day. The timing and the way that all of these things are executed with such a huge degree of dignity. I mean, the moment I had a lump in my throat, I don't know if you were the same, was when the bearer party from the Royal Marines are taking the coffin up the west steps, and there are 3 banks of them, they're quite steep, but while the whole time keeping his naval cap, his sword, that wreath of flowers with that beautiful note handwritten by the Queen, just simply in loving memory, Elizabeth, in perfect order, then to have the silence. And I agree, Rochelle, I think it was a silence for all of us, frankly, to just remember what has been an extraordinarily difficult 12 months, not just for the royal family with everything that's happened, but for the nation. It was just a moment in the sunshine, as you say, Philip, to just, I think and reflect and remember what we've lost.
It was very moving. It was very moving. And I think he obviously, we know that COVID measures had to have been taken, which they were, of course, but he actually requested a no fuss affair, didn't he?
Very much no frills. Lovely personal touches, not just in the Land Rover hearse, which he personally commissioned and spent 16 years working on with Land Rover to get right, including even the colour, so it represents what they look like in the military. But equally, that wonderful touch with his carriage riding horses and the carriage. So those fell ponies are the ponies that he used to drive, and then a little box of sugar lumps.
Now actually, I didn't know it wasn't explained on the coverage that I was watching what that was. We knew that it was his cap, and we knew that it was his gloves, but I didn't know what that was, and that's sugar lumps that he used to give the horses.
Exactly, and also it's reported this morning, and this is a lovely touch, and I think the Wessexes have conducted themselves amazingly well during the whole of the last week. But Lady Louise Windsor, so that's Sophie and Edward's daughter, she's 17, she was taught to carriage drive by her grandfather, and she's now going to inherit that carriage and pony.
Really?
So she's going to continue riding them, because they live nearby to Windsor at Bagshot Park. It's only 10 miles away.
What about the moments between the family? There was a moment when Catherine looked across to the Queen, and almost there was that nod.
Yes.
It was described, I think, as a sort of a long distance hug
Exactly.
type of thing. Are you okay?
And also afterwards, Kate was seen just giving a kiss to Prince Charles and putting an arm around, because he looked extremely emotional. He was wiping his eyes with a handkerchief afterwards.
And then you have the moment that you've got because they hadn't been together as they walked in. They're walking up the hill, and it almost looked as if Catherine stood back and allowed the two brothers to get together and talk before they were out of shot and we didn't see any more.
Absolutely. So you initially see the Duchess making conversation with her brother-in-law, Prince Harry. Then she moves away. Harry and William then come together. They were meant to be convened back to the castle in state vehicles, but that idea was abandoned by the Prince of Wales, who just decided to walk up that hill back to the state entrance. And then you see the rest of the family follow, and just the brothers together. Now, I think that they were doing that in a choreographed way for the cameras, because I think they were acutely aware that a lot was being made of the fact that they weren't shoulder to shoulder for the procession. And of course, there's talk of these tensions and the idea that they are barely on speaking terms. They wanted to send a message to the world that they were talking.
Yeah.
We also
want what the day's about, right?
Yes,
I suppose you'd feel a sort of a responsibility not to make it about that.
You don't want to be proving a distraction on a day like that. But equally, we understand that after the actual ceremony, people were milling around for a couple of hours. We don't think that Prince Charles and Camilla and the Cambridges left until around 6-ish, and equally that Prince Harry was still there. So we understand, of course, that they must have had some family time together, which is important.
What about now for the Queen? Because everyone's thoughts are with her, having to get back into life and continue the job that she's so devoted to.
That's right. Well, I think the show goes on. She remains the epitome of the keep calm and carry on slogans we see on our tea towels. It's her birthday on Wednesday. Buckingham Palace have said there will be no celebration or marking.
That'll be a hard one. That'll be a really hard one.
Really difficult for her to be marking her own birthday by herself without her husband of 73 years. She has been out walking her two new puppies. She's got a new doggy and corgi, which is nice because that's proving a distraction for her. She got them in March. Of course, her family will be near. The Duke of York's just very close at Royal Lodge. She's got Princess Beatrice and Eugenie close by. The Cambridge is now back in London because their children start school again, I believe, tomorrow. So, of course, you're going to see this buoying up from the rest of the family to support her. We have grown used to her cutting a solitary figure on jobs because, of course, Prince Phillip retired from public life in 2017. Yes. And I think that will continue. There's no suggestion at all of her stepping back. She continues to look at her red boxes every day. She'll continue with her weekly audiences with Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister. But, of course, we think about her future, and I think for the other members of the royal family now, there needs to be a slight recalibration, not least in the absence of the Sussexes. I think we'll be seeing more of the Wessexes. I think we'll be seeing more of Princess Anne, Prince Charles and Camilla coming in support, and I think that's what we would expect.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.